Natural, Randy Couture. I actually hit him up because I'm really fucking confused. I don't understand this Muhammad Ali Act for MMA. I don't get it. There's different reports coming out. But first thing is, I want to clarify, there's like 12 ABC named fighters unions that are popping out. None of those have anything to do with what you're trying to do, right? With the Muhammad Ali Act?
No, we're the only one. The MMA FA, the Fighters Association, is the only one that's spearheading and pushing, trying to get the Muhammad Ali Act passed. None of the other, and I believe there's only two that I've heard of. One's with the baseball guy, PFA.
Okay.
The other one, which is confusing for some people, is the MMA AA. That's the one with George and Cowboy Cerrone and those guys. I think actually Cowboy was the only guy there that wasn't represented by CAA.
Yeah.
And so I think Dana kind of yanked his chain from something else that had nothing to do with any of that. But those are the only two other organizations out there. I think the PFA is kind of fallen by the wayside. They lost some of their financial backing and some of the things they had going on. I think everybody saw right through the baseball guy that this was kind of a money thing for him. There are a lot of questions still about the AA, the one with George.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, there's a long-standing feud between CAA and WME, who is the new owners of the UFC. And although CAA claims they're not backing the Athletes Association, all the athletes involved are represented by them. Bjorn Rebney is involved. There's a rumor, or it's believed, that Rebney is trying to form another organization that will compete with the UFC, not unlike what PBA, the Pro Bull Riders, PBR, is to bull riding. They want to form something like that. And so I'm sure that Cain Velasquez and all these guys have been promised something for stepping up and kind of representing the Athletes Association. But they, again, none of those organizations, to my knowledge, have supported or gotten behind our movement at the Fighters Association to get the Muhammad Ali Act expanded and amended to include all combative sports athletes.
So my understanding, that's what I was going to say. It's my understanding is all I have to do is really just change
the definition.
One word, right?
It's a little more involved because there's actually breakdowns of time limits and rounds and stuff like that in the Ali Act. And obviously we fight in 5-minute rounds, not 3-minute rounds like boxing does. So there will have to be a minor adjustment in some of the language with regard to rounds and all that sort of thing. But that's not really that big a deal. The major thing we're asking them to do is change what just says boxers now to combative sports athletes. That will cover kickboxers. That will cover guys that are doing now, which is becoming more and more popular, the professional submission leagues.
Yeah.
Those are combative sports and are potentially being pay-per-view streamed and making some significant revenue. And here's the things that the OLI Act does for mixed martial arts and the protections that we need. First of all, it standardizes contracts.
Okay.
Contract standardized and basically voted on by the ABC, by the Association of Boxing Commissions, which regulates not only boxing, but regulates our sport.
Right.
You filled out that paperwork. You checked the box, mixed martial artist or boxer.
Yeah.
So it alleviates the coercive and restrictive and exclusive contracts that are going on in our sport right now.
So essentially what it's going to do is you're going to sign to fight whatever, this date, this night, this opponent for this championship, non-championship fight, whatever it is. It will not include the 360-degree contracts we're seeing right now where a fighter signs his contract, they all of a sudden own him every direction, everything they do, name and likeness for Universal for all time. Like it stops all that mess, right?
It potentially stops all that mess. It gives us the leverage to negotiate a better deal for a couple of reasons. The OLI Act creates transparency in boxing. This was huge because guys like Don King and Bob Arum were taking advantage of a lot of boxers.
Yeah.
It standardized the contracts. It made exclusive contracts illegal. And the analogy I like to use is, can you imagine if all the tennis players, the top tennis players that want to fight or play for the Wimbledon title were forced to sign an exclusive contract to Wimbledon. What would happen to the U.S. Open, to the French Open, to the Australian Open, all the other promotions out there that are promoting tennis and have titles? What would happen to them? They would go away. They would not exist because all the top tennis players would be tied up to Wimbledon.
But
that's what's happening in our sport right now.
Well, before when tennis first started in the 20s, and you had Lacoste was actually playing still, the alligator, which is what he became. He only played in France, and in Wimbledon. That's all he played in because it was too problematic for him to get on a steamship to come all the way across to try to play in the U.S. So it was just the sport was those sports are made differently. Boxing was made differently. They've had 100 years to fix themselves. Like they were when they first changed the rules in the 20s. They had to the 80s and 90s before they finally put the Muhammad Ali Act in to get their stuff squared away. MMA is a much younger sport, and it's set up where the promotions own the belt. And we all know BJ Penn went through it. He walked away with the belt, and then they sued him. And he's like, "Look, I have the belt. I'm still a champ." What is this?
Taking me time to educate myself.
Okay.
Here's the flaw in the system that we're using in mixed martial arts. The sanctioning body and the promoter are the same guy.
Yeah.
That gives the promoter way too much power and leverage over the athlete. If you want to fight and be ranked in the UFC, you're going to sign that 17-page piece of crap contract that they put in front of you, or they're going to go to the next guy.
Yeah.
They're setting the titles. They're manipulating the rankings and setting the rankings for that promotion. This is sport-wide. Bellator's doing the same thing in their promotion. World Series of Fighting is doing the same thing. That's the system we're using. That's the flaw. It's anti-competitive.
Yeah.
Why wasn't I able to fight Fedor in 2005, 2006? Yeah. Because he was signed to Pride in Japan, and I had to sign as a very exclusive contract to the UFC. They couldn't come to a deal to make the Fedor fight happen. That's the number one guy in my weight class. That's the guy I want to fight.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's in Pride or the UFC. I want to be the best guy in my weight class. I need to fight him. They couldn't come to terms with him to make that fight happen because he had a control and exclusive contract with M1 Global.
Right.
M1 Global wanted to do a co-promotion, was willing to do it. The UFC is like, hell no, we're not doing that. Why would we put M1 Global over just to make this fight happen? Even though it would have been a huge fight, Fedor and I would have made a ton of money, probably more money than anybody had made in the sport at that time.
Right.
And it would have brought who knows how many viewers to the sport. But they threw all that out the window because they had me to an exclusive contract. They couldn't get an exclusive deal with him. So the whole thing went away. That's anti-competitive. That's why Floyd Mayweather can now negotiate a $40 million contract with a promoter to put on one of his boxing matches with Pacquiao or whoever the top fighter is that the fans want to see. That's an open market. That's a competitive market where the promoter bids for those titles. I don't even know what belt that was for.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't care. All I wanted to see those guys fight.
Yeah.
Because it's become all about the organizations. The fighters are basically forced to promote the organization instead of the other way around, where the promoter should be promoting the fighters and the fight.
So we get into a situation of like Amanda Nunes versus Ronda Rousey that just happened. The whole thing was on Ronda Rousey. Every commercial I saw, everything I had was Ronda Rousey, and she wasn't the champ and hadn't been the champ in 3 title fights. Like she got beat by Holm, then Holm obviously gets beat by Tate, so she loses her belt. She's not around for the next title offense. Then Tate loses it to Amanda, so that's the second title offense, and then she fights again. But they're promoting Amanda. They're not promoting Ronda at all. In that situation, does it fix it, or is that situation not going to be fixed?
Well, here's the deal. Ronda's signed to a very exclusive contract, as is Amanda. Mm-hmm. The organization is going to promote who they think is going to sell the most pay-per-views. They're going to manipulate those rankings to make how did Conor McGregor jump from 4 to get a title shot in the rankings? Because everybody want to see him run his mouth and see him fight.
Okay, so here's another question.
Ronda Rousey's been their cash cow for a long time now. Of course they're going to throw her back in there. She should have if she had a manager worth his salt, she should have exercised her own right to negotiate for another fight, get warmed back up after 13 months off and coming off a loss to a striker to face before she faced Nunes to potentially get her title back. But she didn't have that leverage. She wasn't able to do that. They were coming to the end of the year. They needed to put good numbers up in their pay-per-view so they could get the bonuses that they had coming to them in the buyout situation, and they threw Ronda to the wolves.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that simple. Now that they're not going to like that how that sounds, but I think that's the truth. And this is funny because, and I heard this from one of the fighters that was fighting on that card. He was in the back, and he heard people from the organization saying, "Oh, Ronda's going to tear her up." They had no idea,
no clue.
They had no clue what was really going on in the sport and how those two technically really matched up. And that's a shame. That it's terrible. But so we separate the sanctioning body from the promoter. Now we have a free and open market. If I want to fight whoever I fight, regardless of what promotion they're signed with, the promoters can bid, and that fight's going to go to the highest bidders.
Okay.
They'll figure out their TV deals and their pay-per-view deals and all those things that bring all that to the table. Then that fight happens. They bring in whatever they bring in. We split it up however we agreed to split it up. They have to disclose all of that, everything they bring in off of that fight, if that was me and Fedor. That's that transparency. Now I know when I fought that guy, what I brought in. I know my value. I know my value in the marketplace. Now the next time they want me to fight, I can say, hey, we made this amount of money that time. This is just as big a fight. I think I'm worth this much. And we're talking about percentages.
Yeah.
Most boxing cards are bringing in 60 and sometimes 80% of the revenue that comes in from that show. It's divided up amongst the entire card. Obviously, the main event fight takes the lion's share. Guess how much we're taking in an MMA fight?
Is it like, hold on. I just heard this. Isn't it like 6 to 13%?
There you go.
Okay. I do retain information. So this raised me to another question, though, because today it dropped that Nevada State Athletic Commission has had a conversation with Conor McGregor today on February the 14th, Valentine's Day. He came in either yesterday or whatever, sat down with Nevada, and is having a conversation about the money that he owes from his fine. And they want to renegotiate it, but also for a Floyd Mayweather fight. Now, he's in this exclusive contract, and the last time I was in the contracts.
This is very interesting. And to our point about the Muhammad Ali Act and the protections of the Ali Act, what did Conor McGregor and Diaz, they've both done this. What did they both do? They both went to California and they got licensed as boxers. When you and I signed our first pro contracts for MMA, we got to sign a national number as an MMA fighter. Every boxer gets a national boxing number. That's how they track us. That's how if you get knocked out and you get a 45-day or a 90-day suspension. All the commissions that are governed under the ABC can track that number and know you shouldn't be fighting in West Virginia when you just got knocked out in Nevada.
Okay.
That's how they track us.
Yeah. Okay.
As a boxer, they're also protected by the federal legislation, the Muhammad Ali Act. So while Dana was complaining and on McGregor's back about all this boxing talk with Mayweather, and it's going to be a huge fall for him if he tries to do this. Now he's gone out and got a boxing number. He's protected by the Muhammad Ali Boxing Act, which renders their contract, which excludes boxing. You've seen the contract.
Yeah.
You had to sign the same one.
Yeah.
Said you cannot box, grapple, wrestle without our express consent. That is now, that's rendered, that's illegal. You can't do that under the protection of the Muhammad Ali Act. So what does Dana do? Dana flips a 180 and says, hey, I'll offer both you guys $25 million. We'll make that fight happen. Because he now realizes he can't stop them from doing this because they're protected under the Ali Act.
Right.
So now he might as well get on board and try to make money off this fight, even though he probably thinks it's silly.
Yeah.
And doesn't really want to do it. So him throwing his hat in the ring, making them an offer to promote the fight actually helps and again, makes our point too. We need to be protected by the same federal legislation that boxers are protected by.
So, to my understanding, as of right now, at the moment we're doing this interview, and things have been very fluid since this morning, that between Mayweather and McGregor, Mayweather's come out and said, "Yeah, the fight's getting closer. We're just worrying about back end money now. We've come to agreement on the front end money, what we're both going to get paid to show up. Now it's the question of the back end money." And immediately after, Dana came out and was like, "No, deal's not done. Nothing's ever going to happen. If Conor decides to go down this road, like you said earlier, he's in a long route to hurt." Muhammad Ali Act stops that from happening. It says, "Look, whatever, Golden Boy Promotions is going to pick this thing up. They're going to throw it at Mandalay Bay because they're obviously talking in Nevada because that's where Mayweather likes to fight."
Well, there's two hurdles. There's two hurdles. Yeah, which promotion in boxing it wants to pay those fees that they're all negotiating on and make the fight happen, and then which state athletic commission is going to sanction a bout between Conor McGregor, who has no boxing experience, and Floyd Mayweather, who is arguably the best boxer in the last 10 years.
And that becomes a question.
Now, there's a huge payday involved.
Yes.
When money starts flowing, athletic commissions and a whole bunch of people are willing to overlook a lot of things.
Yeah.
But there's a disparaging difference in their experience levels. It's not a mixed martial arts fight. And if it was a mixed martial arts fight, they'd have the same problem getting it sanctioned for Floyd Mayweather to fight in MMA. It makes me wonder, how did they get James Toney licensed and sanctioned to fight me in Boston? How did that happen?
Well,
I gave the man credit for his boxing ability, but it was a mixed martial arts engagement. It wasn't the same thing.
It's also
this is a boxing engagement.
Like I said, the sport is so young that it's a lot of changes. We have some huge changes in rules and judging factors that came out here in January. That you last summer had a fight. I mean, you and McCarthy had to have an argument with New Jersey in the middle of that damn thing. Like it was absolutely nuts of what was going down to ABC council meetings. But we've had some rule changes. So when you fought James Toney, we almost have to kind of throw that out because the conception of MMA and the rules of MMA kind of were a little bit different. Were a little bit different of how the commission were running things. Now I think the commissions are a little bit more unified and really going, okay, that was kind of dumb. Boston's going, yeah, our bad. We're sorry about that. Stuff like that's not going to happen again. We're not going to let that happen because we're trying to get the sport into the next level. You can't keep doing that if you have these what's it called? These gimmick fights, of just these these kind of circus shows. And to me, McGregor and Mayweather is kind of a circus show, and it doesn't help the fact that it's being done in boxing because the Muhammad Ali Act steps in the way. In MMA, we still kind of get away with it if we choose to because of we saw it with Donna 5000. I don't
know if the OLI Act is getting in the way of it. I think the bigger issue and the bigger hurdle, like we just said, is the disparaging difference between experience in boxing for McGregor and experience with Mayweather. So a commission whose sole purpose is safety of the fighters, how are they going to make a waiver or create an exception to allow a guy with that little of an experience in boxing to fight one of the top boxers in the world right now? That's the issue. That's the commission issue that I see.
Okay.
The OLI Act doesn't. The OLI Act, if anything, is allowing it to happen because Conor McGregor has a very exclusive contract with the UFC that precludes him from boxing, grappling, wrestling without their consent. But because he's now a registered boxer in the state of California, he's protected under the OLI Act. So the OLI Act is actually allowing him to potentially make this fight happen. He finds the right athletic commission that's willing to give him a waiver because of his lack of experience in pure boxing and account for his experience as a martial artist. Now maybe this fight happens. That's the hurdle I see. It has nothing to do with the OLI Act. I mean, it's just like Inoki and Muhammad Ali in the match that they had years and years and years ago. That was a very interesting matchup, and the rule stipulations that Ali put on, on what could happen and what couldn't happen had basically Inoki crawling around in the crab walk trying to get his hands and legs a hold of Ali. It was interesting, but, again, huge show, a lot of eyeballs, a lot of money.
Yeah.
Pearson still created a waiver, created the rules, and allowed that to happen. This could happen, and I think largely because the OLI Act is now protecting Conor McGregor and rendering the exclusive UFC contract null and void.
So what's the benefit then for, let's say, what's the benefit then for World Series of Fighting to have the Ali Act put in MMA?
Very simply, it creates an open market. Right now, it's a very anti-competitive closed market. The UFC has 500 top fighters signed to exclusive contracts. We're seeing free agency left and right. When guys' deals run out with the UFC, they're jumping ship and they're going to Bellator and they're going to World Series because they don't want to wear the uniforms. They want to be able to garner as much from their sponsorships and all the other things and kind of go back to that more old school way of how it was when you and I fought.
Yeah.
Left and right. I mean, we're seeing it all over the place. So if you create an open market through the protections of the OLI Act, now World Series or Bellator is going to have access to make those top fights happen with their guys or whoever they want. They can bid on it.
Okay. So
and that's good for their brand. That's good for, both of those organizations have backers that have TV channels that are trying to create content. They don't even step into the pay-per-view market really right now because 90% of the revenue in our sport comes through the UFC.
Yeah.
They're haggling and fighting over the other 10% that comes in. In 2015, the UFC made $600 million. Combined, World Series and Bellator made 30.
Wow. So the only promotion that, and they're the ones that are fighting it the hardest, is the UFC. It's going to hurt because they're going to lose the big fights.
I've actually heard verbal support for what we're trying to do with the MMA FA from those other two organizations, Bellator and World Series, because they see what's going on. They're getting a bunch of those disgruntled fighters that are free agents now and want to go. They still want to fight in our sport, so they're going to these other organizations, and the only ones that have hired a lobby group for the last year that have been trying to shut us down at Congress and on a political front has been the UFC. And now they've just created a PAC, which is a political action group, which is interesting to see what they're going to do with the money they've put together with their PAC, who they're going to hire to be the voice of why they feel it shouldn't change.
So what are the hurdles left? Like, I know you've been running DC quite a bit in the last few months. You've really been having talked to a lot of different congressmen, a few different senators. How many hurdles do we have left before it can actually get to a vote on the Senate and House floor for this thing to actually get approved?
The bill has been put into the 114th Congress, which is going on right now. It's got 9 sponsors, some on both sides of the aisle. We've got 3 Democrats and 6 Republicans that are sponsoring the bill. We really had no pushback, even with the lobby groups and everything else that's going on. We're in what used to be called the Energy and Commerce Committee. I testified at the subcommittee hearing at the end of the 113th Congress in December. I was just out there talking to a bunch of congressmen and put a bunch of congressmen through a workout in their facility. It's been submitted now to the 114th Congress, but obviously government right now is in huge transition period.
Yeah.
The 100-day transition, getting Trump up and running in the administration and all the changes that are going on with that. So that stalls us out a little bit. So every 2 or 3 weeks, we've got athletes from the Fighters Association going out to continue to door knock with congressmen to tell our stories. Here's the thing. You and I both know we're standing in a position of truth.
Yeah.
I'm living proof of why the OLI Act would have affected my career and would have made things better for me.
Yeah.
Obviously, 5.5 years ago, I quit fighting. I retired, but my son's fighting. I got a gym full of guys that are aspiring fighters. I don't want to have them have to sign the same crappy contracts that I had to sign. I have an opportunity to change the sport across the board for everybody, make some transparency in our sport, allow our fighters that are coming up in these future generations to be able to know their value in the marketplace and sign a fair deal, get a fair piece of the pie from the revenue that we as fighters are bringing in. Without the fighters, there is no show.
Right. So
but the organization, their position is well, we resurrected this sport. We changed it. We resurrected it. We're entitled to this. It's our sport. That's how they feel.
Yeah.
So you guys should be happy with what you're getting paid, even though it's lopsided and it benefits the promoter way more than it benefits us. Now, if you create an open, transparent market and a standardized contract, now if they want ancillary rights and all the other stuff that they're putting in their contracts now, they're going to have to negotiate with me over that.
Right.
Which is why they don't like me. When they bought the company in 2000, I had good management at the time, and we've always tried to negotiate for those ancillary rights. We knew what they were. I had to be educated. I didn't know at first, but my guys educated me, and we forced them to take a bunch of that out, which allowed me to do the EA video game before it was, and which allowed me to write a book, which allowed me to, do a lot of things that would have been tied up. Round 5 and the action figures.
That's right.
All that stuff would have been included in those ancillary rights had I just signed that contract and let them have all of that.
So if somebody wants to get involved and they're just at home on the couch with a fan of the sport, but they want to help out or try to make this thing happen, where do they go, or is there anything they can do?
Go to our Facebook page, MMAFA.
Okay.
Go to our website, MMAFA.com. Show your support. Repost all. I mean, there's a ton of us. Pete Spratt, John Fitch, Kung Lee, a bunch of us doing little video snippets and sending out pictures and we're doing some meet and greets. We're doing some things to educate people, just like we're sitting here talking.
Yeah.
The same thing happened for me. I had to educate myself on what all this meant to me and what's really going on in our sport, how the system's flawed, how the system's being used against us, and we're being used by these promoters, how all that fits together. We walk a very fine line as athletes because, I've been so fortunate to have been one of those guys in that top 2 or 3% in our sport that actually made a decent living, was smart enough to recognize my brand and to squirrel away a bunch of that fight money when I made that fight money, and I'm doing okay. But there's a whole bunch of guys that aren't up in that 2 to 5% that are, they got a short window to make their mark, and then what? So we're, as MMAFA, as the Fighters Association, we're trying to come together, get as many fighters behind us, because, again, without the fighters, there is no show. We have a very strong voice if we get organized and we exercise that voice. The tip of the spear is getting the OLI Act amended to protect us, to cover us. And then from there, as a Fighters Association, why can't we combine and get health care?
Yeah.
SAG does it for actors.
Yeah.
Why can't we as a Fighters Association do it for all the fighters that want to join, that want to be part of this? That's what we're trying to organize. That's what we're trying to get together and do. We don't have a backer. We don't have anybody. It's just us, a bunch of fighters.
Oh, so there's no financial backer in this whole mess.
That's why we're doing the meet and greets, to actually not only to educate fans that want to come get an autograph and a picture, but to raise some money, because we're all coming out of pocket to go to D.C. to lobby these congressmen and do all this stuff. Joe Kennedy from the Democratic side, Mark Wayne Mullins from the Republican side are the ones that have kind of pushed this through last year and now in this Congress. And they're our political allies in kind of getting this through. Mark Wayne Mullins is a really, really interesting guy. He's an Oklahoma guy.
Yeah.
From Oklahoma. Fought a few times, good friends with Mikey Burnett, has his own experience with the sport, knows it inside and out. So he's a great guy as an ally to have help us get this through the political process.
So last question before I let you out of here, and thanks for all that. You totally educated me, and now I know where to go to get more information if I need to. Fedor's coming back. He's fighting this weekend against Matt Mitrione.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was the fight that got away from you, the one fight that you would have loved to have had, during your career.
Yeah.
At his age, the way Hemmingsen knocked him out from underneath and how he's been getting beat lately, how is this fight going to go with Matt, do you think?
There's some questions, certainly some questions. I feel like obviously Fedor, and obviously with the communication gap, that it's an issue to just sit down and really get his opinion on why did you feel the need to come back? What was going on? Why? Did you have more to do, more to accomplish? Didn't want to go out the way you went out? What's going on with you as an athlete that you felt like you wanted to compete again? Obviously, the Rise and show in Japan, which was his first show back. Then he fought again in Russia in a different show, and it was a rough and tumble fight. There were a lot of people that didn't think he won that fight.
Yeah.
It was a pretty dang good fight. Matt Mitrione's an amazing athlete and one of those unpredictable fighters.
Yeah.
You kind of never know which Matt Mitrione is going to show up in that cage, and that's got to be a little worrisome for Fedor and how to get a handle on how to approach this guy. I'm sure we're going to see the same stoic Fedor we always see. That's going to come out and give you that little head fake and throw that blistering right hand. And hopefully Mitrione's done his homework and gets out of the way of that, because it could be a short night.
Yeah.
If he ties Fedor up and uses his size and his athleticism and takes a little gas out of Fedor, could be a rough night for Fedor. And that's what makes an interesting fight, because you can make a case for either guy. There's questions on both sides of the cage there. It's going to be interesting.
Are you going to be up there for the fight?
I don't think I'm going to make it. No, okay. I haven't been asked to come do any of the normal brand ambassador stuff that I've been doing for Bellator for this one. Obviously, it's a huge fight. Everybody's going to be watching anyway. So I'll probably watch it on TV just like you.
No, I'm reffing that night. I'll be there.
Oh, you're reffing? Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'll be there.
That's in the house. They
actually gave me the Fedor fight, and I told them I'm not ready for that yet. So you guys go and give it to Big John. I'll let him take it. So it was nice. No, not really. No, I got no chance. No chance. No. My crew is Big John McCarthy, Beltran, Mike Beltran, Jason Herzog, and myself. Of those 4 referees, I'm the one with the least amount of experience, so I will definitely be on the undercard, which is where I belong. With that experience, especially if anybody's watched, if you watched UFC 208 coming out of New York, you saw some of the issues that are going on with the judging and the reffing. You understand why you have to have a certain number before you're allowed to be up in that limelight position in the main event. So
I think they're creating kind of, for referees at least, they're creating that ranking system, not unlike what you and I are used to in wrestling, in the wrestling world. Fila Exceptionals were the ones that got the bump to do the Olympic finals and some of the big matches in the Olympics. And if you weren't ranked that high as an official, you didn't get those matches. I think we need to get our judges on a similar system, because we're still seeing some disparaging judging going on. And I think that's, again, all part of that process, and something I really appreciate with the ABC, because they've always opened their doors, opened their arms, been willing to embrace us, let us talk and explain technically and tactically what's going on, and interpretation of the rules. And it, we still have that education process going on. And I think especially have some work to do with our judges.
Yeah. That was my my one tweet. I'm probably gonna get yelled at by John when I see him on Saturday. I was like, we got to fix the judging. I mean, that was the whole reason why I started reffing to begin with, is because I saw a real problem. I saw friends of ours. I'm cornering them from the Couture, watching them with these refs getting where the fights clearly should have been stopped, and the referees are allowing it to continue. I'm like, okay, the reffing is just bad. Like, someone's going to really get hurt and their lives going to get shortened. And so let's see what I can do about it. And then started, because that's the whole point of it. But now really judging is the next issue. But I think with the 10-7 rounds, the 10-8 rounds have really been added hard come January 1st. And most of the commissions, not every commission has
yeah, and I think it's again, there's an education process going. Mm-hmm. I'm on that committee for those rule changes and some of those interpretations, some of that criteria that ABC has assigned a bunch of us who have a ton of experience in the sport to figure out how we continue to make the sport move forward. Yeah. There hadn't been any interpretations of the rules for a long time, and that's one of the reasons why New Jersey was kind of pissed off, because they were responsible for kind of coming up with the unified rules back in the day. Yeah. Which, obviously we ran towards regulation. We wanted to be regulated and viewed as a real sport, not just some freak show. And New Jersey helped us do that. And hats off to them for having the nads basically to step up and help us create unified rules. But now they're kind of butthurt that we're kind of altering some of those rules, making them better, eliminating some of the outdated stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense, that are really not safety issues for us as fighters. And they feel like they've been, cut out of that loop, which isn't really true, but that was, I think, it came down to pride and ego. And
Yeah, for sure.
as much as we want to say hats off to you guys for stepping up and helping us create unified rules, we as a viable committee need to continue to evaluate, manipulate these rules so that our sport continues to move forward with the fighter's best interest in mind. And that's what we're trying to do.
That's awesome. Like it's great. Thanks so much for this, man. I really appreciate it. Way over the length of time I told you we were going to do it, but I'm glad I actually got to talk to you about it.
One other thing that comes to mind, and it's funny because I was asked almost from the moment I started fighting in 1997, well, why does Floyd Mayweather make all this money for one fight, and you're in mixed martial arts, you don't make anything near that? And I was like, yeah, they'd pay me $20 million for one fight. They don't have to do that once.
Yeah.
I will ride off into the sunset.
Gone.
And I think that's the thing that we're starting to realize, and we start talking about TBI and CTE and how, what do we fight 3-4 times a year? Because, first of all, we love to fight, but second of all, we want to make a living.
Hold on. I just realized something. You're saying that this Muhammad Ali Act will encompass even submission, so like EBI and like submission underground with Chael Sonnen. They'd also have to start.
Those are combative sports that are being promoted, and just like boxing is. So it could potentially, if the money really starts to flow for Metamoris and Chael's show, and I think there's more of those shows coming.
Yeah.
Because it's becoming very, very popular in the grappling. I mean, we'll cover kickboxers. The kickboxing is not regulated by the OLI Act right now either.
Oh, so this is...
It would cover all combative sports, athletes.
At the professional level.
At the professional level.
So
if there's a promoter that wants to promote those athletes and make those matches happen, they would then be protected by the things that are in the federal legislation for the Muhammad Ali Act.
Wow, that's awesome. That is actually just way bigger than I even thought of how much it actually encompasses and how many athletes it's going to help.
But if I only had to fight once every 2 years, that's a lot less abuse on my body, a lot less shots to the head, because now I'm making my fair piece of the market value in our sport.
Well, the last time I looked, and my numbers could be wrong, but I think Mayweather-Pacquiao made $300 million. And I'm not sure the combined numbers of all MMA fighters together would equate $300 million. And they made that in one night. So there's a big disparity and it needs to be fixed. Even if it's just a little bit, it needs to get fixed out. So people aren't going home and like, yeah, I just fought, but I'm still working my full-time job at Costco tire department because that fight did not make me enough money to survive the next month, let alone, months after that. So, yeah, I get it.
We've still got professional mixed martial artists that are sleeping on mats in gyms because they can't afford rent at an apartment.
Yeah. And it's not, and that's not you're just saying that because it's that one kid. You're just using that one story. This is a story that's normal at pretty much every major academy. You got that one guy that's like, yeah, he lives with me. He sleeps on my couch in my 3-bedroom apartment that all the other bedrooms are taken. He can't afford to sleep anywhere. So he sleeps on the couch in the front room. And that's just how it works. It's crazy how that goes on.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks, Randy. I appreciate it, man. Have fun. Sorry, I'll miss you on Saturday up at Bellator, but have fun.
Well, enjoy.
Watching my sweet ass on TV.
Great day, bud. Good talking to you.
See you, man.